Hey, good evening. Got a little special treat tonight. Well, it's something different, something I haven't done. One of the questions came up today. Someone pointed out this project called green architecture. Now, green is my thing. That's green pipes. There's a template project, which I guess templates are kind of cool in GitHub. You can actually create a template and create a project off it. Pretty cool. But there's this thing called clean architecture, and it looks like a pretty good attempt at kind of drying up and kind of putting some spa front end, and it's actually kind of cool. The fact that I was able to clone it and just hit F5 and run it, I'm pretty pleased with that. So what this is it's a template project on GitHub. It's called Clean Architecture. The link is right there. I don't know if you can actually see it. I guess I could post it in the chat. But this has a whole bunch of technologies in it: Angular, Mediator, Entity Framework. All the hotness is in there. And one of the questions came up is, what would it take to actually use MassTransit instead of Mediator for initially the Mediator part, but then with a mind looking towards the fact that anything you write in MassTransit language, for Mediator is going to be consumer based, that you could then move over to go to RabbitMQ, as we've shown how to do in earlier videos. So I pulled this thing down, fired it up. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll just run it real quick. It does, like I said, it worked right out of the box. I didn't even use it as a template. I just cloned it and said, let's go. And it spins up all the Angular goodness and runs a whole bunch of stuff in the background that I honestly have no idea what it is. But it runs. It's a spa, and if you hit fetch data, it does this little weather forecast thing. And if you log in and register and do all that stuff, you can manage your to-do list. And so I could go in here and manage my to-do list. And I don't know if it remembers between logins. Yeah, it doesn't. Because I'm using, I think, the in-memory database. But it doesn't matter. That's not why we're here. We're here to just kind of show what we can do, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So the one that I'm going to focus on first is this fetch data. And what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Let's stop my service here, get us some screen space. Is I'm going to go into this get weather forecasts query handler. So at least the way that I've seen that this works, is the weather forecast controller from the original project, all the guts have been taken out of it. And this is very similar to like the .NET Core based template from what I've seen. And what it does is it goes to Mediator and it does a send on the get weather forecasts query, which just implements a type of iRequest, iEnumerable weather forecast. Now I'll admit I don't know entirely how Mediator works, but I'm guessing that by writing this out, it looks for a request handler for that query type and then returns the type that it expects. I'm guessing that's what it does. So I thought that would be a good place to start and just work on this very simple case and then go into some of the other things like how Mediator behaviors can then become middleware within MassTransit. So it should be kind of fun. So let's get started with just getting MassTransit into the project. So one file that I found in here is called dependency injection. And this looks like where it sets up a few things. I don't know if this is the right place. This looks like infrastructure. It looks like there's actually multiple dependency injection files. So let's see, that's the infrastructure. What do we have here? Okay, so this is the application. Okay, this is where Mediator is being added. So I'm guessing this is probably where we want to add MassTransit. So I'm going to go over here. It looks like this is the application project. I'm going to manage the NuGet packages, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw MassTransit in here. We'll pull in the latest 7.01 package, which was released over the weekend, had a few bug fixes on 7.0. Can't believe I forgot to actually sign the packages for most of the people in the .NET framework. They're able to use it, even though it's built for Net Standard, but there's still a lot of signing in the Net framework space. So sorry about that. Pretty simple oversight, easy fix, and now we're back in there. So I'm going to install MassTransit 7.01. This is running on ASP.NET Core, so shouldn't be a big deal. I don't think I need anything else at this point. Hey, Brave Cobra. Nice of you to join. And Panos RU, that's the one. That's the guy or person, I should say. I don't know. That kind of brought this up, and that's kind of why we're here tonight. I thought this would be kind of a fun adventure and something to do. Still staying at home, so that's always good. So I want to add mediator, but I want to add, oh, look at that. That's an add mediator, but no, this is add mediator. This is my mediator. The other mediator. Let's see here. Athens, Greece. All right, very nice. Welcome. So services.add mediator. Did I add this to the right package? Wondering. Packages. Transit 701. Duh. Forgot one package. Let's go back to the NuGet package manager. So I have MassTransit, but I also need extensions, dependency injection. That'd be a good one to have, because otherwise I don't have the extension methods for all this stuff. Now add mediator is going to resolve. And I don't really think I have to configure too much yet. 2 a.m. in Belgium, Antwerp. Oh my gosh. Does time really matter when you're constantly at home? I've just called it living at work now, because working from home just, it's all the same thing and it all runs together. So it's almost like it just doesn't matter now. You're just always at home and always doing something. So I just added mediator to this. This is going to put the iMediator interface into the project, and nothing's really going to change at this point. So let's go first look at this controller or this query handler and write that as a consumer. So if I was going to write this as a consumer, and I'll just do this here in this class, is I'm going to say I'm going to have a weather forecasts consumer. I'm going to make that a consumer of, I'm not going to reuse that message type entirely because I want to run this alongside. I don't want to break the existing functions because I want to just kind of flip this over and compare and contrast. So I'm going to call this get weather forecasts, which I think I can do pretty easily. I will have to create that type. I'm going to include that reference, and then I'm going to create this type. Why is it not going to let me create that type? That's annoying. That type. Only I can create one. For now, I'm going to just create this type. It's going to be the get weather forecasts type. And it looks like it doesn't have any input arguments, so I'm just going to leave that be. And then I'm going to implement the missing number. So the comment in the chat about not removing the mediator package. Yeah, I want everything to still compile, and I just want to make my stuff there, and then I'll flip the controller over to call my code and delete the code that's being currently used by the old path and just kind of migrate from where we're at to where we want to go. So I'm going to just literally copy this code here. I don't know what summaries are, but I guess they're a type. Summaries. Oh, it's a weather forecast thing. New weather forecast. Okay, so have that. Literally just copied that over. Why is it not? A namespace. What is this thing? That? Oh, duh. Private variable here. There we go. Okay. Clean that up a little bit. Clean that up a little bit. Okay, so we have summaries, we have values. That must be our cities and weather conditions. It's awesome. We're putting random temperatures in. Hopefully we can get some scorching numbers. So that's the consumer. Pretty simple. It does basically the same thing. Of course, this return task from result isn't going to do a darn thing for us because MassTransit doesn't work that way. It's just a basic task, no value there. So I'm going to need another contract. Now, one thing I notice is that Mediator lets you return system types as just a request handler type. MassTransit isn't built that way. You need to have a message contract for for this to work. So I'm going to just create a weather forecasts type, which is going to be the return type of get weather forecasts. And I'm just going to do an IEnumerable of forecasts inside there. And IEnumerable is kind of weird. It's interesting but exciting. But one of the things I typically try to do is just include an array. So it really doesn't matter which way you go. You can do one or the other. Arrays, I think, are a little more descript, but it doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to do await context.respond async. I'm going to respond with a weather forecasts. And then I'm going to use an array initializer to do that, or a message initializer to send that response. And then I'm going to create I have the enumerable right here, which I think is the VM. Yeah, so I'm just going to say forecasts equals VM.toArray. That probably is going to get mad at me because this is an enumerable type of weather forecast. Oh, and that's what I'm putting in the message. Okay, so that's good. All right. Now I've said I'm going to convert that to an array, have the weather forecast type, and actually it would convert that for me automatically. I don't even need to do that, so not go too crazy there. We now have a consumer, weather forecast consumer. Perfect. The question in the chat is, what would be wrong with IEnumerable? Nothing is wrong with it. And it works just the same way. Some people like it, it's fine. I just put it as array just because I do. I guess that's why. It doesn't matter. I guess IEnumerable would be fine. I guess it's just history in my brain. That's kind of the way I've always done it. Yeah, so it could work either way, and we could flip-flop it, and it won't even matter. So with MassTransit, when you use Mediator, we want to register our consumers. Now here, we're just doing add mediator assembly.getting executing assembly. I think I'm going to do the same thing just for fun. I'm going to say add consumers, and I'm just going to pass that assembly. No reason not to. It'll just pull all the consumers from the assembly and register them. The one thing that's interesting about this, though, is I need something to be able to do that request, because if I just do a send, I need to be able to handle that response. So it seems like with Mediator, when it's doing the send in the controller, send is going to return an IEnumerable of weather forecast because I'm passing the get weather forecasts query, and that query knows the return type. So that seems to be a convention with how Mediator works in terms of generic overloading. To call this from MassTransit, I'm going to actually add a request client, and this is going to be for the get weather forecasts type. And what that is going to do is it's going to register a type in the container called iRequestClient of get weather forecasts, and I'm going to use that to call get response of the response type that I want. Difference in the way it's done, but just showing how this would migrate over. So I'm going to go back to that weather forecast controller now, and I'm going to add a constructor dependency on that request client. So I'm going to say request client of get weather forecasts. And then instead of using this code, I am going to say response equals client.get response. And the response I want is weather forecasts. There's nothing in the request. There aren't any parameters or anything in it. So I'm just going to do an empty initializer, which will just initialize no properties with no properties. And then I will return response.message.forecast. It looks like that's what that was returning. IEnumerable of weather forecast. Okay, so yeah. And I've awaited the task. Okay, good. So that'll work. Looks like I can't tell if I have a compile error here. I don't understand these CHTMLs. I'm gonna look at what my errors are in my solution, and yeah, I'm just gonna ignore that one. Okay, so I don't have any errors. So I'm gonna run this again. all I've done is I've added my consumer and I've changed the controller to use that consumer. Wait for that to start up. All of its bootstrapping of all the JavaScripty stuff. We're going to call fetch data. And it worked. Okay, well, that's good. Better than not working. Did we get some randomization? How do we know if it reloads? Okay, balmy, cool. We got some weather temperature changes. If we go back over here to the logging, we can see that started up our site. We route matched with a get. We called the received. Yeah, so we did a executing controller action. MassTransit received the message. You can see the query was received on the weather forecasts. Receive transport. Mediator got the received. So the response actually came in before the mediator logged that it received, which is funny. But it returned the type. So we're actually going through MassTransit now for that message. That's step one. We've added that in. Now we don't need that control, that get weather forecasts type. We're no longer using that query, I don't think. In the same file, same file. Yeah, so we aren't using that query handler. We should be able to get rid of that. Get rid of that. Now we have our types. They're still there. I don't know if hot reload happens in that indexing pause due to npm install. That's an exciting one. Yeah, so that worked. We were now basically flipped that over. So instead of using mediator, it's using mediator, which, you know, that's just kind of funny to say. Question in the chat is, it uses proper message broker like RabbitMQ now. Is there an in-memory broker implementation for MassTransit as well? Yeah, there is an in-memory transport. It's really just meant for unit testing because it isn't durable. MassTransit Mediator, it works a lot like the in-memory transport, except everything runs in process. So when I call send on a MassTransit Mediator, or I call publish, it's all running within the thread that called that method, whereas if you use the in-memory transport, it actually dispatches it through the task parallel, or I think it's called the task parallel library. Yeah, TPL. I always wonder if it's task or thread. Yeah, but mediator doesn't serialize. It's all just passing by reference, so it's super fast, like 700,000 dispatches a second instead of, you know, maybe in-memory gets, I don't know. I haven't timed it lately, but like with RabbitMQ, I typically get 12 to 15,000 messages a second going over the broker to another process even. So okay, so that was the first consumer there. That was the first piece of the puzzle. There's another piece of the puzzle that I don't know if it's under common. There it is, common behaviors. There's this logging behavior. So another question that came in is, how do you get these logging behaviors to work in? And definitely just fire any questions in the chat if you have them while we're going along here. I think the nice thing about that being a consumer is, just let me kind of reiterate on that a little bit. This consumer is a standard consumer type by MassTransit. You can run this with RabbitMQ, you can run it with Azure Service Bus, you can run it in an Azure function, you can run it everywhere. So your logic inside this class can be used in any context. If I port this over and decide, okay, now that I'm using MassTransit's mediator, but I'd really like to break this out into another service, all I have to do is change configuration and tell it to use a broker instead of using mediator. And it should work. All the consumers and everything will work lock stock as they do. So it's like an easy migration path. You know, I think that's a great thing. Plus, consumers are just one piece of the puzzle. MassTransit supports sagas, routing slips, a lot of it state machines. You can use state machines in Mediator. I could have these front-end controllers call into state machines using an ID and a state saga repository, EF core, whatever, to actually create state machines that are managed and have controllers that sit in front of those to like add things. And so like to-do list items, each one of those could be a saga instance that has a state of it's been added, it's approved, you know, things like that. So you get all of the capabilities of MassTransit when using MassTransit's Mediator, because everything you're doing is built around the same key atoms like consumers, sagas, etc. Everything's message based. So again, just kind of a cool reason of why you'd want to do that. So the next thing I want to look at again is, like I said, these behaviors. So from what I can see, and it seems like this is a mediator thing, is you can actually put like a request preprocessor in, and it doesn't matter what the type is. And I'm not entirely sure. My guess is that this gets called and then just is part of the processing pipeline, because I did see this request in the log before when I was doing the other type. And if I go into the, I don't think counter hits the site. I think this is client side. But if I go to do, oh, I already stopped the, so, but let's just kind of look at this logging behavior and see what we want to do with this. So if we wanted to create, I'm not going to do it that way. That's painful. So the way MassTransit handles behaviors, at least of the way in the context that I think they're discussed here, is MassTransit has middleware. So middleware is documented on the site. I'll probably go over there to cut and paste a couple things, or I might just knock it out real quick. So to create a middleware component, I want to duplicate this logging behavior for any message type. So I want to create a logging filter. In MassTransit, middleware is filters, because MassTransit's entire plumbing is wired through a series of pipes and filters that get composed into these networks that are all in memory. So because we want to do this generically, I'm going to put a tMessage. I'm going to say that this is an iFilter of consume context tMessage, with my goal being of, and message types, again, they always have to be reference types, so we have to put our reference there. And we're going to need two methods in here. One called probe, which is informational, so that you can display the structure of the entire network and like dump it out to JSON so you can kind of verify your configuration. And then send, which actually passes the message through the filter. Now for the probe, I'm just going to call this context.createFilterScope and just call this logging. And in next, I'm going to copy this. Now this one looks like it's doing a little more stuff, so I'm going to have to look at this for a second. Current user service, that's fun. Identity service, that's fun. So we're taking some dependencies in here. This is going to be fun. This is actually going to be really fun. We're going to explore some really new stuff here, so this should be interesting. This might be more painful than I thought, but hey, it's all about good fun. So this is going to be a little more interesting because it looks like we want to pull stuff within the current container scope. And by default, filters are static. So we're going to explore some new filter capabilities here. Nothing like learning on the fly. And what we're going to do is, instead of going against, so there's a lot of different stuff in the receive pipeline of MassTransit. And if we look at the documentation, you go up to the search and just do receive pipeline, you can see how the message traffic flows when a message is received. Now, some of this stuff, actually this entire structure happens. Did someone not post in? Oh, hold on. I'm going to post. I guess I forgot to put the link. Oh, someone else did it. Awesome. Okay, thank you for doing that. Like I forgot to put the link in the Discord channel. But so one of the things, the key point I want to make here about the container lifecycle scope within the receive pipeline is I can put filters anywhere in the pipeline, but if I put them up here, I don't have the container scope. So I want to put filters down in where I have the container scope so that they can be resolved from the container within the existing runtime scope, and all will be good. Now, I'm trying to think, because mediator, because not a transport, I want to say that I'll have an existing scope because this will be interesting to see. We should have an existing scope, so I might be able to do this another way. I'm going to try to do this a little simpler way because I don't want to jump completely in with both feet at this point, but we'll see if I get there. because I want to access these two different services that are in here, I'm going to say, I'm going to get the service provider. So I'm going to call get payload by service provider. And what this should do is this should get me the current container scope, the current service provider for the current scope that's executing. Because I'm running in an ASP.NET controller, I should have a scope, so that should work. If it doesn't, I guess we'll find out really quick. It'll blow up right away. I'm then going to request these two services. There is a second way to do this where I could inject these dependencies and create a filter reference, but it puts us deeper into the pipeline, and I kind of want to start with just a basic filter, but it just turns out that this filter has a ton of stuff in it. So I'm going to resolve these two services directly from the service provider. Say provider.getService, and it's going to be current user service. Why is that barking? Oh, probably because I'm not like using Microsoft.extend dependency injection. Yeah, that's what I think. We're going to do the same thing here, except we're going to get the different type. New service. But again, taking the existing thing that's there, we're going to go with it. Oh, and we need a logger. That's exciting. We can actually get the logger. I'll show it the other way later because I think that will be more useful, but I want to avoid too much craziness here. Although it feels like this is already getting kind of crazy. Could just do a console out. That would be all. Save us a ton of time. But we're going to go ahead and get those, because what we're going to then do is we're going to copy this logic so that we have it exactly as it is. And we're going to say type of tMessage, delete this extra type. We're going to use the current info service to get the user ID. We're going to get the identity service. We're going to make the method async. We're going to log the information. We're going to log context.message. And then we're going to await next.send with context. So the way middleware works in MassTransit is it forms a series of filters, and they kind of form a chain. If we go back to this, each of these filters and components calls the next component. If it doesn't call the next component, you're basically stopping. So everything has control. You can create scopes, you can create try catches, you can do using statements. You have basically complete control of the flow of the message, or the context in this case, because it's a pipe context, through the pipeline. If you don't call next, you're basically saying, I'm done, we're out, nothing more to show here. So with that going, the last thing we're going to do here is a call await next.send, because we want to, when our send is called, we're past the context, which is the consume context of T, and we're past the pipe, which is the next segment of the network. So when we look at the pipes and filter network, this will run, we'll do our thing, we'll log it, and then we pass it on to the next one. So I think that gets us with the logging filter that we need. And that's per message. Now, I could just register this in the container, but MassTransit doesn't automatically wire these up to every request consumer, but it can. And to do that, I'm going to try this and hope it works, because I've actually never tried it. All this stuff is pretty new, so new to me, as in I wrote it, but I didn't like try all these edge cases. I'm going to write a consumer configuration observer. And this is going to be for logging. We'll just call it for logging. And this is going to be consumer configuration observer. And this is going to get called whenever a consumer is registered on either the mediator or on a bus. And what this lets us do is, as things are configured, we can do things like inject middleware into the filter without knowing the types in advance. So if I had this logging filter because I want to know T-message, I would have to know T-message in advance. Well, now I can actually just say, okay, well, when you configure a consumer that has a specific message type, I'm going to add a piece of middleware to the pipeline that will keep track of that. So the filter that I'm going to pass in here is I'm going to come in and say, okay, well, now I want to add configurator.message because I know the message type. And I'm going to say add filter, or I'm sorry, I'm going to say use filter, new, logging filter, T-message. And what that's going to do is as people configure consumers and the message types are discovered out of that consumer and automatically connected to Mediator, it's going to say, okay, well, it's going to call that, and it's going to add that filter to that pipe so that as the messages are dispatched, that happens. So now I'm going to go back to the infrastructure or application dependency injection. And within here, I'm going to say connect. Okay, this is where the world might end. Connect. Yeah, this connect consumer configuration server. This is where the world's going to fall apart because I don't know that this supports this. We got to look. So service collection mediator configurator, application configurator, media. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. All I had to do was like go and like discover stuff. Context, comma, config. I call this config act. I'm gonna rename this. Then I'm gonna pass this in here. So configure mediator, what this does is this gives us access to the underlying pipeline configuration, exactly like if you were going to configure a receive endpoint in MassTransit. So here is where I can say connect consumer configuration observer and pass my new, what did I call it? Logging consumer configuration? Great. So this is where I'm going to wire that in so that I can observe any consumers connected, configured on Mediator. This is going to let me add that observer for that logging. So with this in place, I'm thinking I have everything I need there to replicate that behavior. I have the logging filter. I have an observer that's going to add it, and I'm going to log the information. So let's run it and see what happens. I don't have a user ID or don't have a username, so I wonder if that's going to like just return null. I didn't log in. Create an account to do. Once this loads up, and we're going to jump over and we're going to say fetch data. It worked. It didn't crash, so that's a good sign. Let's go look at the log. And we have, let's see here, here's the receive. Clean architecture request, green pipes, dynamic internal clean architecture, weather forecast queries, get weather forecast, get weather forecast. Okay, that's a whole lot of namespace love there, but we could certainly clean that up by moving some stuff around, but it worked. Our logging filter actually got run. We configured the endpoint for Mediator. You can see where we added the consumer, and you can see where the call came in, and it actually logged that request using info exactly like it said. I will clean this up a little bit because I'm curious what some of this stuff is. I don't understand the at. Something I don't know about the way that works. Not going to stress about that too much. The context.message, because there's no toString for that type, there's really not much to show. It's just telling you the message type. When you do message, toString just gives you the object type. I would probably do a type of in that instead of doing it. Yeah, so our log worked. I'm going to go clean up a little bit of namespace noise here because I feel like we can just sort of put this in what do we have here? Do we have queries? Get weather forecasts? Yeah, whatever. I guess it's not a big deal. I'm not going to mess about it too much, but I don't want to move stuff around. But yeah, so that was our logging behavior. We were able to strap that in pretty easily. I mean, that's how you would do it in mass transit, whether it's easy or not. I mean, the Mediator definitely has lower startup because it just sort of auto wires based on 3 or 4 different conventions. Because of the way mass transit is built and the way the filters and pipes connect together, you have to basically create the observer, but once you have that, you can plug it in and it just works. It does do some of that wiring for you for scoped things. So I think that's the next piece I wanted to do. Is I was going to go create the performance filter, but I figure we have the logging filter. The rest are just depending upon capabilities. We got a question in the chat here. Well, I could figure this out for Mediator easily. The mass transit configuration, I wouldn't have a clue where to start. The syntax is too confusing for me. Okay, fair enough. It's definitely different. I mean, you're configuring some different things. The next piece I wanted to kind of cover on here, though, was this is kind of annoying, having to do all the get services and all this stuff. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this so that this is a scoped filter. Oh, okay, good, thanks. I'll have to follow that up later with the concatenation of strings. So I have this logging filter this way. I want to change this so that I'm doing it through DI instead of actually doing it the way it is right now. I'm going to call this, I'm going to keep that other one around. I'm going to call this the scoped logging filter. And in this case, I am going to be filtering on a different type, consumer consume context. I think, gotta be sure, I'm trying to remember. Trying to remember if this works the way I think it does. I think it does, but I'm not positive. But we'll see. I think I just have to have consume context, but I'm going to check. And I'm going to move all of those dependencies to the constructor. So like these right here, I'm just going to, actually I'm just going to do it the exact same way this filter. Why not? Sense in recreating the wheel when it's already written. Message. Trying not to like overgroup, but I go overboard. But we're going to do it the same way here. We're going to do the concurrent user service, the identity service, and the logger. And we're just going to change this show scoped filter, just so we know the difference of what's actually outputting the data. And now with the scoped logging filter, what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our dependency injection setup. So we configure the mediator, and here we're going to say use consume filter. And here we're going to pass type of, what was that called? Logging. I changed the name of it. Scope logging filter. And what's the second argument type? Registration. Yeah, that doesn't work. That's going to be, that's not, oh wait, no, I have registration. Never mind, I'm dumb. So I'm going to what I'm doing here is there's a new capability in MassTransit 7. Yes, I will basically create a fork on GitHub of the original clean architecture project and then put it in here. So that will be a thing. And yes, and then I'll upload this. So after I'm done, there'll be a forked project on GitHub on fatboyg/clean architecture or whatever that is my fork. And assuming I get this in and maybe make it to where you can configure it or something, you know, maybe just create a PR so it shows up back on their site. I noticed there's 15 or 16 PRs already on it, so I don't see them being pulled in a lot. But I would reference the issue that you mentioned, because I know you created an issue about does it support mass transit. So this use consume filter, if we look at what this does, is it takes a generic type and the registration just so that we can connect into it. And this is fixed in 702 to work properly with consumers and sagas. Right now it only works with consumers, I think. I'm not positive. and it might not even be at the right place. I'm not sure. So hopefully this will work the way it is. But yeah, this is basically, I'm just giving it the generic type and telling it to create it within the scope that exists. So we'll see if it works. This should inject all of these dependencies for me so that we can call logger and do that. Now we should get both of these logs actually, because I'm going to leave them both in place to see what happens. But this will just say, okay, for all consumers that have a message, give me this scoped logging filter. So let's see if it works. This is a new capability that's built into MassTransit 7, wasn't in 6.3.2. This is a new thing that was added. Wait for this to load up. Coming up shortly. Okay, I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, fetch some data. And that doesn't look like a good sign. What did we blow up? Object reference not set to an instance of a type. Oh, send. Yeah, this is where I kind of wonder if it's not working right, because I did put a fix in place for this that's going to be in 7.02. I'm just wondering if there's something that's broken on the scoped filter, or if I just specified the wrong type. But well, I have a debugger, don't I? I could just go to scoped filter. Not going to be there. If I go to this, go to this, go to station, and oh, I don't want that. Filter type. If I go into here, issue explicit reference. Oh wow, it's like it's already creating issues for me. Oh man, I can't set breakpoints in other code. That's annoying. Well, shoot. I guess I can't put breakpoints in decompiled code. I don't know why it's returning null there. It's interesting. Can't find something, but again, I'll have to break that down separately. But the why that didn't work, I don't know, because I don't think I have all those dependencies should be registered, and all those there, single generic type. Huh. I don't want to spend too much time on this because, like I said, I think there were a couple things I was looking at, and I have already made a couple fixes. I might have to make a couple more. I'm wondering if there's something I didn't pass. Oh, iService provider. Why would I need that? Why wouldn't I have it? Weird. Registration.get required service. Oh, maybe. Okay, so let me look here. So let's see here. Oh, I don't have a service provider yet, do I? Yeah, that's why it would use context, because I don't have service provider built at this point, because I only have the services collection, which is why I would do it in here, because this context passed in has the resolution context. So that should be the way it works. I mean, it should be able to pull that from context. I don't know why it doesn't. But again, I'm not going to go too crazy on this. There's obviously something that I need to look into with the scoped filters. Yeah. But the other observer-based thing happens, and what you can see is the scope filters under the hood are just using a very similar observer to connect and get the messages and register it for you. So it's taking some of that, explicit wiring out, so you can just reuse the built-in capabilities. So what else is done in here? We have behaviors, and we have mediator. I don't think it impacted validators or auto mappers or anything like that. Yeah, I don't see anything too there. Yeah, I think that's the two things. I mean, I could go and do these. So there's this validation behavior. This one looks like it. Okay, this one actually might be kind of fun, and we aren't too crazy yet. We could probably spend another 10 minutes on this. So this validation behavior is interesting because this is one where we might actually not want to call next. And I'm curious why the logging behavior didn't have this type of thing. So, okay, so this is just a request preprocessor, whereas this is a true pipeline behavior. So let's create one of these too. I think this will be fun. Fun, yeah, fun is always a relative term, it seems. Always an adventure. So I'm going to create a validation filter. And it's going to be on consume context again, because we want that same type. Because of the issue we have here with the service provider and filters, for now we're going to run these in the way we did the others, is we're going to resolve it. Change request to message, obviously. I've got one too many. Oh, I don't need this. Okay. Did I log anything here? No. Good. Okay, so we're going to just intercept this. And we're going to say, okay, if we have any validators, because we didn't plug those in, we're going to use the inline. Here we're going to say context.message is the request type. Rename this to validation context. Cancellation token we can actually get from MassTransit because it does that. .any, validators.select, validation context, failures, errors. If failures.counts, throw an exception. Otherwise, we're going to call next.send. Okay, so we have that. Pass.all, so we're supporting all the async, all that goodness is there. I think that's right. Okay, so we're going to get those validators. If there are any, we're going to send them out. Now, I don't know if we have any validators for the whatever I'm thinking of. Really spaced my brain. For the weather forecast. So we're going to have to check that one out and see what we have. Change this to validation consumer observer, validation filter. Have that. Okay, so we will go and configure this one in dependency injection. Have our validation filter. I'm just going to take that out for now. I'll leave that there to bookmark so that I remember that. Let me see. We have a question in the chat. Let's see. I got a question. How do you typically structure your code for larger? Oh, that's a bigger question. I'll have to answer that one later. I can definitely put some guidance out on that. I mean, everybody is different. I mean, every project tries to group things separately. I typically focus on vertical partitions of the app or bounded contexts or business contexts, things like that. It really just depends. So I put this validation consumer in here. How do I know what implements validator? Let's see here. So what validators do I have? Of course, I don't have a weather forecast validator. That is awesome. Because there's no input for it, which is equally awesome. So yeah, I don't feel like writing the to-do list dispatcher right now. Validator. I'm just going to create another validator over here in here. I don't know. I'm goofing around at this point. I have an abstract validator and I have the get weather forecast query. I know you probably wouldn't validate queries, but maybe you should to make sure you aren't going to like blow up your server. We'll call this the get weather forecast. Oh, I like that. Awesome. I'm gonna in the queries, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm just gonna make it silly for now. But I don't even know how to do that. But I'm gonna go to my get weather forecasts and I'm gonna put something really silly in here like int page. Yes, I will put page. I'm going to do something really silly like rule for page greater than or equal to 0 with message. Ooh, look at that. I haven't used Fluent Validator in eternity, to be honest. Page must be greater than 0. All right, got that. Must async, that's even crazier. Man, the world has changed. I want a be unique title. I want this. I don't even want an application DB context. What am I going to do with that? I'm not going to go query a database. Something super simple here. I just want to say page has to be greater than or equal to 0. All right, so we got that. We're rocking it. How do we, it should just auto-register that, right? It auto-registers the validators. I thought I saw that somewhere. Yeah, because these aren't referenced, so they're probably just auto-registered by assembly. So I'm just going to leave that be. Where did I create my validation filter? Okay. Yeah. So let's see if we still run. We're validating the get weather request. I'm going to be really interested to see if it actually works. I guess I could set a breakpoint. That sounds awesome. Forgot about breakpoints. I'm F5ing. It's going to start at 0, so that's good. Wait for this to load. Fetch data. Okay, it hit my breakpoint. Yeah, okay. So I have a validation context. I'm going to run my results. I don't have any failures, so we're going to keep running. Hey, so my validation filter worked. It pulled in the validators from the container, ran, and if I go back here, I have my hot sweltering daytime goodness. I have no idea how to pass an argument to this thing. I really have no clue how to pass arguments to this page. What am I going to do? Put page equals -1? I don't know. I don't think it does anything. If it does, I'm going to be like totally stoked because I'm not actually passing it to the command. So yeah, it probably won't work. Yeah, I don't think that does anything. The way I am going to test this though is I'm going to kill this here. I'm going to stop this. And I'm just going to go over to the controller and do it the way I would do it. And I'm now going to say page equals -427. And I'm going to run it again. So now I'm actually setting that page property in the request message. Yes, I would need to edit the controller and put a parameter on it. Yes, all that fun stuff. You mean this stuff just actually works? I'll do that next. I don't know how Angular passes that stuff through. I mean, I've never built a spa. I don't do front end. I always have other people on teams do that. But we're going to fetch the data, and it's going to hit my breakpoint. I'm going to run here, and I'm going to run here. I'm going to see that I have failures. I'm going to throw a validation exception. And what's it going to do? Oh, right. It came in here. Console should show it. Okay, yeah, it threw the exception. Said the world was bad. I don't know what it did though. I mean, how does I guess it just writes it out. Front end doesn't seem to do anything special when it gets a 500 or whatever. I'm assuming it returned a 500 HTTP request. What does it show here? Object result middleware or something like that. 500 application/problem. Yep. Yeah, the front end teammate never gets invited to the party. That's the truth, Ruth. But I am validating it. It's doing that. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to do it this way. So if I just say int page, you're saying that'll do the thing for me. And page could equal page. And if it's there, otherwise it'll be default. That since it's default, MassTransit's going to do that for you anyway, so it doesn't matter. Because page is an int, and if it is a nullable that has no value, it's going to pass that. So the question is, shouldn't you pass the message to the error queue? Yeah, normally I would, but the way Mediator works with MassTransit is everything is synchronous. So this get response call, it's actually running the consumer code on that thread owned by the controller. Well, that task chain. It's not really a thread, but let's just call it a thread for fun. So that's the difference with Mediator, is there is no transport and messages are not serialized. It's all passed by reference in line the exact same way that MediatR does it. So you don't get, normally if you're using like the in-memory transport, yes, it would move it to an error queue on the in-memory transport, and you would still get the exception back in the request client, but that's, different. So yeah. That hopefully answers your question. But yeah, because we're using Mediator with MassTransit Mediator, it's actually executing that in line so that this await call is actually running through and going through the pipeline and invoking the consumer directly, because there's no transport with Mediator. So now let's see if I pass the page in. I'm just going to see if this works. Oh yeah, you're looking at the code and it's got an API exception filter. Gotcha. Yeah, that would make sense. That sounds like a clean architectural thing to do. So we're going to try this and see if Meldorf's idea works, and that we can actually cannot get slash. Damn it! Oh, because I didn't pass a default. I have to pass a default. Is it that smart? That's smart. I think that's probably why, because it was trying to get slash and it couldn't do it. I don't know. Shouldn't have gone straight to weather forecast, should it? It does. Come on. Come on. Nope. I guess I broke something really bad now. I don't know why. Must have killed it. How could that kill it? I didn't do anything. It wasn't my fault. What our man. Oh, an argument for type page was not provided. Oh, so it's some TypeScript thing. Yeah, there's no way I'm getting into the TypeScript code and figuring this stuff out. Forget that. That's not happening. That's way beyond my skill set. We've stepped off into crazy land at that point. So. Yeah, not gonna happen. So I think that's about all I was going to cover for now. I think it's a good enough intro. I mean, we spent about an hour kind of digging through this project. Like I said, I will fork it and put it up on the my GitHub as a fork of that project. I'll upload my changes to it, and y'all can kind of take a look at that. It's a good start. I mean, it isn't fully comprehensive, but I covered the different types of behavior, pre-request filters, the actual validation filter, which I think is probably a big moving piece, and then just kind of managing the moving over to consumers and configuring the endpoint and using observers to kind of configure those middleware components. So thanks for joining in. Appreciate the idea. It was kind of a fun one to work through. It's also fun to kind of dig through someone else's code and see how their stuff works and kind of see how MassTransit can fit into that. So take care. I'll upload the video, and thanks for joining. Talk to you later.